We are at Rule 62 Studios in Bossier City, Louisiana, and this is The Grouch and the Brainstorm. Episode 31. So, welcome back. This is Mike. I'm here today with Matt.
Hello.
And Jill.
Hey, guys.
And we are recording episode 31. And I think we're going to talk about service today. So, going to dive off into step 12 either in the next episode or the following episode, but I wanted to talk about service before we talked about step 12. And hey, as I see it, this is just me. Everyone has their own recovery program. Step 12 basically comes in two parts, which is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, tried to carry the message to alcoholics, right? Try to carry that message.
That's right.
And then the second part, practicing the principles in all of my affairs. So when we dive off into step 12, it's more or less living the lifestyle after the 12 steps have been done and hopefully done right, and carrying the message to individuals who may still be suffering, and it may be individuals as a group, individuals as one person that you're sponsoring, and we'll talk a little bit about all of that when we get to step 12. What I do want to talk about today, though, is service, like just service to AA, which is not something you have to have all 12 steps completed to do. I have seen folks come into, and this is my experience again, I have seen folks come into the rooms and immediately, obviously, they're not introverts. Like I was an introvert, right? And immediately just take up doing something in the group, right? I've seen that. And then I've seen people who come in just like I did and kind of warm up to the crowd, get to know people, gather enough courage to maybe even just make coffee. I'll never forget. I did in my regular life. I don't guess I ever made coffee. Like, just didn't make coffee, and didn't drink it until I got to AA. I did not.
Really?
Not
It'll
even,
do it to you.
I didn't like it. I just didn't like it. My dad would give me some when I was a little kid, and I didn't like it. But I made coffee, and the instructions are written right there above the coffee pot. That's actually in more than one clubhouse, right? How to make coffee. In New Orleans, there's an extra scoop. But hey, they don't like that.
A little some for Santa Claus there.
Yeah, a little extra. And but I made coffee for that first time, and I never will forget. Like, two people came in after me, and I don't even remember who they were. Like, but they drank the coffee, and they were like, "Who made this crap?" And like, I think he's in the bathroom.
Yeah,
I don't know where. He just came in, made coffee, and left.
He left.
And I probably didn't make coffee again for a few more years.
I had somebody ask me at the Koala Club not to make coffee. They're like, just don't do that anymore. I'm like, okay, my bad, dude. I don't drink it, so I don't know.
We make light of making coffee, but that is, in fact, service.
Sure.
So we arrive in the rooms of AA. I did. How about that? Arrive in the rooms of AA, and I'm under the impression that all these people in here just kind of know each other, got their stuff together, have a routine. I'm a guest. I'm a visitor. It would really seem out of place if I grabbed a mop and started mopping, or if I went in there and cleaned a toilet, or if I even took the trash out, right? It would just seem out of place. Nothing could be further from the truth. Number one, nobody knows how long you've been there. Nobody. Right? You may have a couple old timers that do a 7-day or 5-day a week regime, and you don't look familiar, and they may ask you, "Hey, you new here?" But nobody is going to stop you from making coffee. Nobody's going to stop you from sweeping a floor or cleaning a bathroom, and all of these things bring us to service. And what else? Idle hands. I guess I could leave it at idle hands. But my first
or idle mind.
Well, once my hands go idle, I don't know if my mind's ever been idle. We talked about that on the meditation episode, but
yeah.
But there is a certain fear when we get in there that we're not going to fit in. How do you not fit in? Unless you're drunk, you're probably, and even if you're drunk, there's somebody going to fit you in. You know?
It took a while. I was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally felt like NASA picked me up and dropped me off at Mars. I didn't know. It's like aliens, and they were talking a different language. I felt that weird.
We do have our own language.
We do.
We do. So maybe translation of that language could be some service work.
I mean, yeah.
Well, you got Peggy Sue over here in the corner that can just all of a sudden out of nowhere tell you about step 6. You don't even know what step 6 is. And
dude, I can barely read. Okay. So like all that stuff on the walls, it's like, I don't know what y'all are talking about.
What
like,
does first things first mean?
Yeah.
What Easy does what?
I'm like, why do they have these posters? You know, what is all this stuff? So,
Yes.
And there is so many. I remember in Mandeville, there is there's 2 signs above the toilet. It's a shared bathroom with just a toilet and a sink, and there's 2 signs above the toilet, and one of them says, "This too shall pass," but the one below it said, "Toilet paper located under the sink in the kitchen." And I'm just thinking, at any moment,
how do you get to the kitchen?
Somebody's going to walk out, pants around their ankles, just going to the kitchen, folks.
Those were 2 really odd.
Checks in advance for toilet paper. It's always
Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous.
Hindsight 2020.
Right.
But and maybe keeping that toilet paper full can be a.
I think too though, like you get in that conversation about service work where sponsorship, and that is, I mean, it absolutely is. But I've always been one of those too that the guy making the coffee or the guy taking the trash out, cleaning up the ashtrays, doing all that kind of stuff. That's all service work, and it all involves alcoholics being able to come in a room and sit down and go to a meeting. And so importance level of that, there's not, I get taking someone through the steps is very important. But if you don't have these other things being done, it's all a part of it.
Somebody does these things.
Sure.
In every clubhouse all across America, somebody does the finances, keeps up with the business end of it. Somebody does the organization of the meetings, getting the stuff out. Who's going to read what? And a future topic is going to be group conscience. And that may confuse some folks out there, especially if you're a newcomer. Don't worry about that, but it will be a future, because that's how we arrive at the decisions that are made, because there is no governing board for Alcoholics Anonymous.
That's right.
There's no rule makers. There's no rule enforcers. There's traditions, and they're called traditions for a reason. They're not called rules, and we go by those in order to keep our organization alive. But all of these things are done by somebody, right? The coffee don't make itself. The bathrooms don't clean themselves. And that's in every single club. And usually if you go out and hang out long enough, you're gonna see that you may have 300 or 400 people that go to that club over the course of a year, right? And maybe 15, 20 of them are the ones that actually dedicate themselves to that. And some of them are in a position where they can dedicate themselves a lot, right?
Sure.
And retirees and stuff like that. And then some who are just, hey, I'm a member of the 530 group, and this is my contribution to the 530 group. It may be something as simple as counting the money every day to put in an envelope, making sure the money gets logged in the log book, or making sure it gets dropped in the safe, or, coffee. We keep going back to coffee, but coffee seems to be huge.
Big deal.
Yeah.
Which is a stimulant. So,
Yeah.
Hey.
You ever been in a meeting that ran out of coffee?
I don't think so.
I haven't either.
So
Have you?
I don't drink coffee at meetings because I have 1 cup in the morning when I wake up, and that's it.
I got my only coffee AA story. I was working 2 jobs a few years ago, was real tired, in between leaving work and going to another one. I go to a noon meeting and I couldn't wake up. I was exhausted. And I was like, man, maybe I'll drink a cup of coffee. I don't drink coffee, okay? I drank that cup. I had to call my sponsor when I left. I was like, I think I need to pull over. I'm high as hell. What are these people drinking in here, man? Like,
no wonder they keep coming back.
I may get a DUI here. I don't even know, And then that explained a lot of other people's energy in the room, So,
Well, and also nicotine.
yeah. Well, I mean, hey.
Well,
2 of the most popular stimulants.
Yeah.
You just explained. I had an instance like that where I didn't really drink coffee. I just didn't. And I know this is going to sound hard to believe. Anyone out there that knows me, I think I was about 2 years sober. I did not drink energy drinks either. And they were kind of new. Monster was the big one, and it was kind of new. And Red Bull had been around for a while, but no, you know what I mean. I just didn't drink any of that. Didn't drink coffee. I probably drank a lot of Diet Coke. And we was me and Wyatt and Savannah and their mom were headed to, I want to say Destin, and it was one of those all night drives where, you know, we left around 6 o'clock, 6:30 and headed to Destin, so we didn't get there till around 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I stopped by a gas station and I got some coffee and I put some of that you know, the squirt sweetener in it, you know, and a whole bunch of fake sugar, put that in there, mixed it up, you know, and I started drinking it on the way, and I got a sensation of almost being intoxicated. So I was like, what is in that squeeze? I started freaking out, you know, what's in that,
I was sweating, dude, when I was driving down the road. It was just a little bitty cup, and I was like, these people drink this crap all the time.
Well, some of them drink pots of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't understand that. But Mike, man, then things have changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike made up for lost time on the energy
I
drink.
drink a lot of, I do. I drink a lot of energy drinks, and
I think though too, people
down
come
to
in and they have that impression of like you said, there's a group and I don't fit in the group and I'm gonna mess up by doing, and it couldn't be further from the truth, you know. And but it takes a little while of hanging out to kind of meet people and feel your way through things, you know.
Well, and that's how you get plugged in.
yes.
Sure.
Well, that's where I was going. Love it. Love the fact you said that. But for me, being plugged in was a big part of my recovery.
Oh yeah.
Being plugged in. And some of these things that we hear about, like, you know, this, when we have the announcements at a meeting and people are like, you know, we're having a big party at whatever, you know, or sobriety Halloween or Thanksgiving dinner, you know, all these, if you're not one of those people who enjoy that kind of stuff, all these, though, are a great opportunity to provide service work. Like all of them.
I agree.
There is not one. You could be the guy who helps clean up after, or the person who makes sure that the event is set up.
Decorations. There's so much stuff that goes on.
And there's structure in there too.
Absolutely.
You know, where I don't know about anybody else, but my life really didn't have, other than my work life, I didn't have any structure. I didn't have any, you know, make a bed after you get out of it, or before you go to bed at night, brush your teeth, or things like that. There was no real structure. And when you go in, you're going to see that these events have structure to them. And again, you're there, you're doing this. People are not going to walk up to you and say, well, some may, so I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, but, you know, Ted, how long you been sober? Oh, well, you probably shouldn't be setting up napkins, and nobody's going to
No.
Nobody. They're, you know, matter of fact, I've heard them say, keep doing stuff like this, you might stay sober.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably the opposite, you know.
Yeah. Conferences, whatever it may be. I'm like, what can I do?
Yeah.
What can I do? And it could be like literally serving shredded cheese.
You know what else
Yeah.
I like about service part of
Not
talking
regular.
about staying
No
plugged
regular
in?
cheese. That keeps you plugged up, not plugged in.
Go back to that Mandeville Bible. This too shall pass. But you know, staying plugged up. So I get up this morning. I had to go by the club to meet something.
Plugged in.
Plugged up, in, out, something, and I wasn't even going to a meeting, you know, but just ran by to meet with a couple people on an event coming up. Well, I see about 8 people that I hadn't seen in a long time because I usually don't go by the club at 9 in the morning.
Yeah.
So I'm harassing all these people all morning, you know, and it changed my day already just going in and messing with them. And I still hadn't been to a meeting. Now we're doing a podcast.
Well, and in a way,
Being around it.
in an unstructured way, that is a manner of being plugged in, though.
Sure.
That is a little tiny meeting outside of a meeting.
Yeah.
Sure is.
And for me, it is. I mean, it's just part
And
of my life.
You know, and there are folks out there, my hat's off to them. They have full-time jobs, and their dedication to the service is just unwavering. I mean, they may, you know, sit on boards, sit on committees, go to all of these events, organize events, which I know a friend of mine down south, I know 2, and one of them I actually talk to every day while he was organizing a conference. And, you know, it's stressful. Had to be stressful, you know, and of course it turned out just perfectly okay because that's just how it does, you know. And I've never met anybody on their way to a conference going, this better be a good one. I've got a 10-point checklist, and if they don't meet all 10, no, it's just not like that. There's nothing as quite as formal as I make it in my head.
You know, it's funny too. My favorite part of service is you watch people, and I think it does tie into sobriety, quality and length of sobriety too. But I watch people around our club like Ben, Craig, guys like that. Their names are never on a list for anything. They're never on a committee. But then all of a sudden there's an event and they're like, you look up and they're taking big bags of garbage
Yeah.
out to the dumpster.
Yeah.
They're running to go get ice. And it's like, where did you come from? And they never say a word about it. You never hear nothing. And those guys do, you know, they're awesome. And there's ladies like that too. I'm not, but that's what I like about AA. It's just, you never know who's going to show up and help, you know?
I never even knew service was part of AA.
I didn't either.
Man, my first sponsor, his name was Dale, and he's gone now. He passed, but he was big into service. He's the one that got me going to group conscious meetings, or we call them business meetings at 5:30. But he's the one that got me going there, and he was the treasurer of the group, and he showed me how to do all that stuff. And he never explained to me, you know, the importance of doing it. He just said, "Hey, we're having a business meeting. It'd probably be best if you came." And then now some of them get a little heated. You know, some business meetings get a little heated, and you don't really, you know,
What? A bunch of alcoholics in a room?
well, you know, eventually,
my
thanks to
God.
that group conscious thing we talked about earlier, though, they do get worked out, right?
Yeah, sure.
But he was really big into service, and you know, unity, service, and recovery, I think, are the like they call them the three
Pillars. Of,
well the
Legacies.
yeah, three legacies, and the three pillars, the three legs of the stool. Apparently, it's a three-legged stool. I mean, I don't know. I've heard
tripod?
that. Well, I've heard that. Like, without one of them, the stool can't balance. Y'all ever heard that?
Yes.
I've heard someone say that. I don't know if it was a speaker or
It was on a movie.
really. It was a movie?
The tripod. Oh, what was that movie called? The Girl Next Door.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s, I want to say.
I don't.
Is that a horror movie?
No.
Oh, never mind.
No.
I didn't see that
I
one.
hadn't seen that either. But they talked about the three legacies of AA?
No, they
Oh.
talked about the tripod, the metaphor, or the whatever the shit it is.
Jill's been in that coffee again.
Yeah. Well, she didn't say how big that cup was.
Yeah.
Classic alcoholic trick.
I like to
I drink
gauge the
one a
alcoholics when they
day.
come in
Yeah,
and they
that-
fill
a
up
vat.
a little styrofoam cup and then they leave it by the pot and just take the pot with them. You know, that's my.
That's-
I'm like, oh yeah, here we go. So,
I haven't seen anyone drinking straight out of the pot either.
there's a couple that would if they thought they could get away with it.
The one I
Gross.
don't understand is decaffeinated.
That's
That's
like non-alcoholic.
That is
beer.
the O'Douls
What are we
of
doing?
AA clubhouses all over America.
Well, I think there's one part of service that, like, a lot of people don't consider it service, and it's just being at a meeting, just being there, just sitting in a meeting. And I don't think people realize how important that is if for newcomers and for old timers. You know, the newcomer comes in and they don't realize how they're helping people that have been sober for a while. Because when I see them and I see them hurting and I see the pain and the confusion, I mean, all of it, I'm like, that keeps it real for me because I don't want to ever forget that feeling. It was horrible.
You know, and two, and I'll say this is just my opinion, but on the opposite foot of that,
Yes.
I come in new and there's Phil F, who's been sober 3 months longer than I've been alive my whole life. Okay. And I just walked in, and then Mr. Joe and Mr. Jerry and people like that. And I can't fathom that amount of sobriety at all. But at the same time, as I sat in there every day doing my 90 and 90, and I go, well, if they're sitting in a meeting 5 days a week and they've been sober 40 years, what reason do I have for not sitting in here?
Yeah.
You
It
know?
motivates you.
And
Sure.
definitely service. I would not have known it when I first got there. I remember
Me
Phil
too, yeah.
F. He'd been sober since 10 May 1979, and my first thought was, you know, what's wrong with him? You know, why is he still here in 2011? You know, the Bee Gees were still
We
popular.
love you, Phil, by the way.
Yeah, love Phil. But what he said, I don't know what he said besides his sobriety date that day. But what he said spoke volumes to me. And in a way that may not even speak to other people. I was really bad off. And hell, I may still really be bad off, you know. But I was thinking to myself, I was 6 years old, and God knew on May 10th, 1979, that I would end up in these rooms and needed to hear this. And I remember thinking that to myself, that whatever was working on me when I was 6 years old, because he brought him into this room and he's still in here, and we just happened to cross paths 38 years later in a, not 38 years later, 32 years later in an AA clubhouse.
Yeah.
Well,
And, to me, that is service. Of course, unfortunately, anybody with a later sobriety date after that just wasn't impressive.
You're right.
Oh, he's been sober since 82.
Only 35
Please.
years.
No,
Well, and
all
even
of these
like
guys.
sharing.
Sure.
A lot of people get into meetings and they don't want to share. And I'm not like pointing fingers or saying there's a lot of people aren't ready to communicate yet, and I totally get that.
I get it.
But if you don't share your experience, strength, and hope in there, then these newcomers are not going to have much hope
to
and
go back,
inspiration.
and even you guys, are more than twice as long a time as I have. So when I hear y'all say things, and even on here, and you're like, "Oh, I do this," I'm like, "Oh, okay, then I'm not so bad off." Like there, and I hear Joe and Phil and whoever, with different lengths of time, but I realize they're still dealing with issues. They still work on stuff, and I'm like, okay, so I don't need to be frustrated where I'm at. It's a process.
It does. It explains that it is an ongoing process, and through their service of sharing.
Sure.
I will tell you this. There are certain members, I don't want to mention anybody, don't want to be mentioned or embarrass anybody, but whenever the topic comes around, I want to hear them share, because I want to hear their perspective on whatever said topic is, whether it's, Joe B says it, when he talks about, is something good? I don't know, could be. It just is, right? Something,
Yep.
You get a promotion, hey, that's good. Well, I don't know, it could be, it could not be. It just is, and man, that just took my perspective of, it took my big giant ego and shrunk it down and put it in a bottle for a little while, where I could understand that sometimes things just are. But that was through his service of sharing, So the service part of this thing, so many different kinds. Like we could probably do a full season on service and bring in different people of our community some who devote themselves to service, some who just, that's what they do on their 2 days off, or that's what they just do on 15 or 20 minutes a day during the meeting, but man, and I think for me anyway, the service also made me feel important. It made me feel needed for the first time in a long time.
Well, and that's kind of how you build esteem, and that's probably what a lot of us lack when we come in, is self-esteem and feeling good about ourselves. And the more that we can do and get out of our heads to feel better about ourselves, I mean, I think it helps a lot. At first I was like, well, I didn't understand like the point, which I'm sure a lot of people don't. And they're like, yeah, do the coffee, pick up cigarette butts. And I was just like, why am I doing this? And it took years for me to really realize like what was really going on. But that it turned into a lot much more than that, because it led me to sponsorship.
Yep.
Which to me is one of the ultimate parts of, AA, of sobriety, is doing that step 12, that second part that you're talking about. And that's something that I continually like passed off, like, no thanks. Like over the years, plural, I didn't think I could help someone. And, my sponsor eventually was like, you're going to die if you don't start doing this. I was like, well, shit. Started doing it. And that is weird. You're having people call you and you're like, I don't want to talk. And
another part, side to that is I'm pretty jacked up. So when I like the idle mind thing, when I sit around and I have time to just dwell on stuff, that's not good for me.
No.
So I found early on, the busier I can stay, the better. Well, I used to stay busy drinking, drugging, doing all kind of horrible stuff. So I had to fill that with something. So the worse that I feel, the more service I'm involved in, because it changes the way I think. It puts it in a different perspective. And it's kind of selfish because I do it for me. It keeps me straight, and I hope it helps somebody else. I do want to say this about Mike. He doesn't even know this story yet, but I'm going to tell him. Speaking, it's kind of involves this, but a few months ago, Mike was moving, and talk about service. The guy's driving from Dallas to here to come do this every weekend, but
Yep.
he gives me some bags of clothes to donate to treatment centers, right? The guys, and so I end up taking one bag, and I had another bag in the back of my truck on the back seat. And I get to the job I'm working, and there's a guy comes in, and he doesn't have any shoes. And I'm like, well, I know they didn't have any to give him in the clothing deal. So I go out there and I get him a pair of shoes that Mike had donated. Nice pair of shoes, by the way. Mike don't play when it comes to shoes, but this guy's tickled to death, right? So he stays there 3 or 4 days, and he decides to leave. He's going to leave treatment, walking. He takes off. He comes back half a day. He comes back. Everything was fine. He didn't do any of that. He comes back. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it in my head, blah, 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 blah. So he's sitting in there the next morning, and I come in. I'm like, man, you left and you came back, man. That's great, And he said, man, I was walking down 70th Street, and he said, I was looking at them nice shoes that y'all gave me. And he said, it just bothered me. And he's like, they've done everything they can to help me. And he said, I turned around and came back, and I told him, I said, we also have GPS in those shoes. You didn't know that, and we're tracking you everywhere you go. But no, it was pretty cool. He said, man, I looked at those shoes, and I was like, you know what? These people been pretty good to me, and he came back. So it ended up graduating. So did his 30 days. So.
Nice.
Just wonder what shoes they were. Now I'm thinking
the gray Ariat slip-on shoes.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
they were clean.
Yeah, they were pretty clean. Okay. I was thinking about this, and that's what I was doing, playing on my phone. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss a birthday, a sobriety birthday. But I remember early in recovery. So I have a, and we talk about him. We talk about Larry and Judy all the time on here. And got to get them on the show. Got to. Yep. Just, both of them. I want both of them here, right? And so anyway, Larry, who is right at, I want to say his sobriety date's coming up. How about that? Next few days.
Awesome.
He'll celebrate 12 years. Wow. So he's about 6 months behind me, maybe a week or so within that time frame. But he asked me in early recovery, I'm going to guess first year and a half. I'm not 100 on that. Maybe the first 2. But he asked me to go talk at a hospital. Now, I had told my story twice, so I was an expert, right? Yeah, I can't remember which hospital it was. But anyway, he asked me to come speak at a hospital. Apparently, he took a meeting into this hospital every other day. And I went for the wrong reasons. I went, because I like to hear myself talk. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I went to this hospital, and, I was thinking I was going to have a podium, and someone who introduced me and all that. Nothing like that. It was a sit down at a table in front of a group of people who were in a hospital and share your story. And I only had a couple years of story to share. I'm not sure. I'd already done the steps, and I really and truly did want to go, but I didn't want to go. The feeling. I don't want to go, but I want to go.
Yep.
And so anyway, I ended up sharing my story with these people in the hospital, these patients, and after the fact, everyone came up and they were asking me a lot of questions, and a lot of questions I couldn't answer. I just didn't have long enough to answer their questions, and I was really worried I was going to mess them up even worse than they already were, which I know now I can't do. But I left that meeting, and I remember on my way home, on my drive home, it put me telling my story into a whole nother perspective that I need to do this, one, to stay sober. I need to tell my story, but I need to share my experience, my strength, and my hope with people, right? And then offer up whatever I can do to possibly maybe sit down with them or help them on an individual basis. But this is not about me. It made me understand through that service work. It made me understand this is not about me. My recovery journey is very important to me, but not necessarily to a lot of people. My experience may help them, right? But for them to think that my recovery is important to them, It needs to be important to me, but my experience needs to be more important to how I can help other people. And I think that it makes more sense of what Bill was saying whenever on page 13 in the big book when he talks about, I wasn't to pray for myself, only when it would be to be of useful to other people. And I know I'm paraphrasing the hell out of that. I don't have my book open currently. But he says that, and it makes sense now. My experience can help other people. And I go to these meetings in places, different places, and not the one I go to now over in Fort Worth. No one said this yet, but I've heard a lot of long-timers talk about war stories and how they don't like people telling their war stories. And we need to stick to not the problem, but the solution. But it helped me hearing people tell their war stories in the rooms of AA. It helped me to hear that people done some worse stuff than me. It helped me to hear, I ain't necessarily talk about drug use. You don't have to mention which drugs or which alcohol or how much. None of that's going to help me. But whenever the symptoms of said disease, whenever we share those, whenever I hear those, how about that, from other people, then it doesn't qualify them as an alcoholic. It qualifies them for me to listen, if that makes any sense.
Well, and that's part of your experience. I mean, it's just like, it's no problem like sharing that. But if you're talking about like, man, I can do so many grams of this, I was doing 400 grams of this a day. I mean, that's where it kind of like goes over the line. I just try to
steer, more to the consequences of the usage rather than the actual,
right.
I think everybody's,
everybody can relate to some good consequences.
Yes.
And I mean, it's just, I think, it's kind of establishing your street cred, I guess, when you get up there. But I don't think, he only drank 9 bottles of Jack Daniels for breakfast. He's not a real alcoholic, that's a waste of time. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
we got a couple of AA friends celebrating birthdays this week.
We do?
Yeah.
Who did?
Couple AA friends.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful.
Larry's coming up this week.
Okay.
Larry W?
No, Larry L.
Oh.
Larry and Judy Larry.
Oh, that Larry.
Yeah. Larry L. So
Roger's got one coming.
Roger's got one
pretty
coming.
soon.
Sure enough.
Awesome. That's great.
The miracle year.
Yeah, I would love to have him back on the show.
Hey, here to tell you about me. I looked at Rod the other day and said, "Hey, man, happy birthday. How was that first year?" And he goes, "It's my second year."
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
What's the second?
Well, how was the second year? Hopefully it was good as the first.
Oh, my gosh.
Real quick.
It's always a challenge.
I forgot a whole year.
Now I have not experienced in my length of time that I've been coming around. I haven't experienced any of the pre-birthday jitters. Some folks are getting close to a birthday and they get a little
Squirrely.
Mm-hmm. I haven't. I've never experienced that. I will say the one thing I have experienced is that these years fly by, and
They do.
and. Yeah, well, the downside of that is you have to turn a year older every year in your belly button birthday before you hit that sobriety birthday. So
Right.
What started out at 38, I was 50-year-olds were old men at the time, and
Mike, I hate to break it. You're old.
I'll be 51 next month, or month after next. So yeah,
God.
coming up on it.
I remember your 50th.
Yeah,
It doesn't seem that long ago.
yeah, it won't be long before it's 51.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm deep into the.
Pretty much, you're old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
yeah.
get letters from AARP, and I think at 55 you get the discount at IHOP. At least my friend Jerry did.
This girl at a pizza place gave me one the other day, and I was like, "Why is the whole meal $3?" And she goes, "The discount." And I'm like, "What
The
discount?"
early bird special.
And she goes, "Senior citizens." And I want to, "How old are you?" And she goes, "I'm 18." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever."
Well, I can say this: another service that some of these people don't even realize they're doing is like Randy T. He is he's probably 15 years older than I am now, so he's probably around 63 to 65ish. I'm not sure of his exact age. He's been sober since '96. Matter of fact, he's got a birthday coming up in February. But we were talking, and I was just 38, 39-year-old guy, and he would tell me, okay, when you hit your 40s, this is going to happen. And everything he said, because I didn't wear, matter of fact, when I got to the rooms, I had a full head of hair. I wore hair gel. I wore hair gel in my hair. And I had a full head of hair. I I didn't wear glasses, no glasses. So he said, your vision's going to go out. You're probably going to start, hair's going to start thinning. And I, of course, I hadn't seen the back of my head in years. So it was probably already gone, which gave him this inkling of idea that I'm not going to have hair. But everything he's told me, and that's going to lead me off into a whole nother section of, these guys that surrounded me told me to get a doctor, see that doctor on a regular basis, get a dentist, see that dentist on a regular, none of which did I do, none of which, So I would be perfectly healthy had I not listened to them. Because now I've got high blood pressure. And
you got to listen to them old guys, though. They're like, hey, your hair's about to fall out. You're on your way to death. They're listing off all the bad stuff. It's like, hey, just keep that to yourself.
It's kind of awesome. They've been there.
No,
yeah,
it is.
So it's
And,
more than just AA experience. It's life experience as a sober adult.
It's everything. It's life. It's sobriety. It's everything.
I mean,
Well,
these
and I
guys can share some really good stuff.
I highly suggest wherever you go, if you got some old timers, after a meeting, if you can get them to sit around, it can be pretty entertaining. We just did that, Jennifer and I with one of our guys a couple of days ago, and we were laughing and giggling. It was pretty good, but they can tell you some stuff if you take the time to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they can. And I tell you what they have to say is very valuable.
I agree. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was early sobriety, this was when I lived in Monroe. I think I wanted to get more involved in my group, so I went to a business meeting, and I suggested I really wanted to bake the cake. We had one
job, Jill. You had bake the dang cake.
Well, we had one meeting per month, and it was always the last Monday of the month, and everybody who had a birthday got all their business there. And so I came in and suggested a cake chair.
Yeah,
They created a cake.
Is this a
Oh my
chair
God.
made out of cake?
Like a person.
Like a chair, like
Someone in charge of the cake.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
I got you. I'm with you now.
And so, that was one of my first service jobs. I was the cake chair, and I made a cake every month for that group for years.
Really?
Yeah, and they were always handmade.
You make it from scratch?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
It was fun for me. I got to do something that I love to do, which is cook and share it with other people on their birthdays, and
Now,
it made me really happy.
A lot of people would say, I can't do it because I'm worried they won't like my cake.
let's go back to old timers. One time, Joe walked in our club, 40 years of sobriety, with a cake. Somebody
Yes.
goes, Mr. Joe, did you make that? And he goes, I made it by Brookshire's. That's what I do. I'm going by somewhere that sells them.
It was just something fun for me to get out of my
No,
head.
I get it. Y'all don't want me making one though.
Yeah, the one time when I was walking out my door, I dropped it, and so there was no cake.
That's the most Jill thing ever.
Yes, it was.
Hey guys, I made a stick and leaf cake. Just going to have to eat around it.
Mud pies. Made mud pies in the
There are
parking
people there that will still eat that cake, I promise you. So, yeah. But, service, I think anybody that you see in any way, shape, or form with any type of sobriety is doing service work in this program in one way or another.
Yeah. And one thing that I like to do is I do a lot of going back to treatment centers, going to treatment centers, telling my story. We have meetings and Matt, you're big about this, is bringing meetings to treatment centers.
Sure.
I've gone to schools and told my story and shared that with them. But that's another part of service work that is really important is going to treatment centers, giving the people there some hope and that there is a life after treatment, and it's not boring and lame as we all thought it would be.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And I know when I was in treatment center, several people came in and brought meetings to the treatment center, and I just refused to pay attention to them.
Yeah, I did too.
I just honestly thought that I was too cool for this whole AA thing.
I was in one for 90 days plus, and all of our outside people that came in were speaker meetings. They all came in and spoke. I sat there for 90 days going, man, what a racket. They are making a killing doing this.
Yeah.
They've done figured this out.
You thought they were getting paid?
Yeah, every dadgum one of them. And I was like, man, I'm going to get on that train. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna hit a lick on this. I got out of the payment so far, 5 years into this, $0
Yeah, become a celebrity though, you'll get paid.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess some of those folks are do all right, but you know, yeah, I finally figured out, oh, they're doing this just because it's the thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, and
I hope everybody knows we're not getting paid to do this podcast.
No.
Randy, I will say this: Randy has doubled my salary every year I've been in sobriety in this program, and it's still at $0.
Yeah, 2 times 0.
He always
Zero.
gives me a raise every year. He's like, "We're doubling your pay." I'm like, "Thanks, Randy."
Yeah.
I think another part of service work that we haven't mentioned is giving. You know, we pass the basket every meeting, and a lot of people may not know exactly where that goes to, and it goes to keeping the building going, keeping electricity on,
Chips.
supplies.
Yep, chips,
All
the
kinds of
coffee,
stuff.
the sugar, the
Yes.
cups, the
Big
air
books.
conditioners. You know, so I have had the honor of being involved in a lot of that over the course of the years, and in depth involved in that. And you know, you do think, you know, most people don't. I don't know. I can't tell you what most people think. I never thought about where my dollar went whenever I put it in that basket. But the truth is, some of these clubhouses have to pay rent.
Yeah.
Like they have to pay to be there because that clubhouse itself doesn't belong to Alcoholics Anonymous. It belongs to someone, and we need that space.
Yeah.
Or that, you know, so we need the space and we pay the rent, which is the bulk of it, you know. But then you've got the electricity. You've got, if you have grass, you've got the grass being cut. You've got so
Parking lot
of
redone.
that dollar, and I'm not going to do this on an episode, but of that dollar, I could break it down all the way to where this is what's left, and then let an air conditioner go out. You know, air conditioners, that's a big expense. And then over the course of, I don't know, the Koala Club. Speaking of service, you know, there's a guy named Jim C. Who was one of the founding members of the Koala Club, and what a service he's done for all of us, right? He's gone now. He's passed away. He passed February 16. But these guys brought me into that part where I could see the inner workings of where that, you know, how these. Now, if you can't afford the dollar, don't worry about
Yeah.
it. Somebody's got you. Somebody got it. It's going to be all right no matter what. You get sober. Right? You just worry about not drinking that day, and don't worry about that basket. Don't worry about any of that. But yes, part of that is just good old fashioned. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. We don't. Have y'all ever seen an AA NASCAR? You know, the NASCAR with AA. It's the one swerving all over the road. But we don't have billboards up that say, hey, go to the Koala Club or try AA. You know, we don't have any of that. So we're self-supporting. We don't get grants. We don't get government funding. We don't get any of that. We are strictly that dollar or $2 or $3 or whatever it is you give. That's what goes to just keep the basic expenses operating. And coffee alone has gone up, I don't know, 15, 20% in the past few years. So definitely, things to think about, And then there is just the basic service of walking up to that newcomer after a meeting and saying, hey, my name is Mike. How are you?
Yes.
The
Meeting before and the after.
And if you're anything like me, you're like, I just want to be left alone. Just don't bother
I used
me.
to haul ass for the first year.
Yeah, you're like, there's people congregating. I
said
gotta
about
go.
Philip, and I love Philip because he wouldn't bother me. He was just quiet. He's like, "What's up?" That's it. That's me and Philip sat by each other for a year.
Well, I was under the impression, like, if I raised my hand and said, this is my first AA meeting, which it wasn't. My first AA meeting was many years before I got sober, but I was always under the impression if I raised my hand, someone was going to try to gang save me after the meeting. Group.
We got a live one.
Yeah. Oh,
They just
come on.
surround you and bring you to a room
Yeah.
where you shut the door.
Well, I mean, and realistically, in early AA, you had to be sponsored in, but once you made it in, a lot of that is what happened. But,
Yeah.
But in today's AA and the way we do it, it just obviously someone's going to come up to you and see if you have any questions, see if you got anything. But they're, as far as gang saving me, Phil F came up to me and asked me if I had a big book, and I said yes, and he told me to go home and read the doctor's opinion. And a very important decision was made that day. Do I just say yes, sir, and go home and continue to do exactly what I've been doing for years, or do I say yes, sir, and go home and actually read the doctor's opinion one more time? And that particular day, for some reason unbeknownst to me, I went home and read the doctor's opinion slowly, because someone that had been there told me to do it.
Yeah.
And it changed my life, And then after a while, going to meetings, to me, I think it took about 45 days to quit thinking about me and what was going on in my head. Yeah, it took about 45 days, and then I started listening to everybody else and what they had going on.
Wow, that's awesome. It took me years.
Well, after that 45 days, it's become like this ongoing Netflix series that just hasn't stopped, because you get involved in people's lives even though they don't know it. You're paying attention to what's going on, and they share and they talk, and you see them come. Unfortunately, sometimes you see them go, but you see them grow. You see people die.
Yep.
You see way more people live. Just some amazing stuff that, if you just sit and pay attention and watch the recovery. And then, of course, you develop this fellowship and these friends and these people in the room that you're close to, that you don't run from in the grocery store. If they showed up at your house in the middle of the night, you wouldn't run them off. But then through sponsorship, you develop relationships with people that almost become like your brother or your father. Someone who is right there, and then as the years progress, it's, I don't want to use the term you become equals. It's not like that. We don't do it, we don't keep score, but it's more or less
peers.
You become peers. You become someone that you're there, and recovery is just as important to them as it is to you. And if someone starts to move off to the side, the other one kind of grabs them, not even knowing, and says, hey, somehow that's going to happen, right? Hadn't been to a meeting in a week or so, and somebody out of the blue that you're really close to called you and said, hey, we're going to this meeting over here at 8 o'clock. Do you want to go? And you don't. You don't want to go. But you say yeah because of that relationship, and you end up going, damn it, I knew I should have been going for a while.
Yeah, I felt great.
Yeah. But that is just another form of service, that sitting down, or that approaching the newcomer after a meeting, or just saying, hey, I'm Mike, how you doing? Or man, sitting in that front room. I can never repay Dale for the service he did. Sitting every Saturday morning at this time right now, we would sit in the front room of the Koala Club for an hour or two and read the big book. We did that for probably about 9 months. We did that every day for about 9 months.
Nice.
And went through the steps. It was roughly a step a month. And I know that sounds kind of, the equation doesn't, but it just roughly overall, it was about a step a month. And we just read the book though. We read when it said read, or didn't say read. We wrote when it said write. We prayed when it said prayed. And whenever there was something written in italics or squiggly writing, as some people call it, we would actually talk about why that was in squiggly writing. Why was that important? And side note, back in the day, it was more expensive to have a book published in italics. So the italic writing actually cost more to put in a book than the regular font. So, and why, I don't know. How it is nowadays, probably not, because anybody can do that on a personal computer. But back then it was more, and it may be more expensive, I don't know, but it was there was something important about it for them to be willing to boot up the money in order to make that phrase or that that thing in italics. And some of the most profound things have come from those words in italics. But he would explain to me why it was in italics. Sometimes he wouldn't know. And he had a lot of years at the time. Sometimes he wouldn't know. He would find out, though, and then our next meeting, it would be. So you had your little meeting with your sponsor, and that was kind of like a little series going on. And then you had your everyday meeting, and you didn't want to miss an episode of that, right? Because then you'd have to call somebody. What happened at the meeting today, And they would have to fill you in. So all of which, to me, just it all blends into service.
Have you had the thing where you're sharing every day in your regular group, and I've had this, and then somebody come up and they go, hey, what happened with so-and-so? And I'm like, how did you even know about that? And I realized they were listening in the past, and it wasn't even a big detail, but it was just something that it's like, oh, people are listening to what I'm saying. That's scary.
Yeah. I thought I was only listening to myself.
Yeah.
And it also helps me, I can tell you, I don't know you're going around the room, right? Sometimes we have meetings where we go around the room, and or they're going to call on you, and I don't know what helped me more, like thinking about what I'm going to say, because
The whole time?
that made me think about it. Whatever it was, the topic, it made me deep dive into my own head and think about this, which deep diving into my own head is never a good idea. But I don't know if it was that or what other people had to share and me just kind of connecting the dots on what was going on in my head and what they were sharing. And then by the time it gets to you, usually what comes out of your mouth is not what was going on in your head. I don't know how that works for anybody else, but it's just, and the more you stick around, the more you become more, become more comfortable sharing. I don't know about y'all, but the longer I was around, and that is actually, I was not a public speaker. I'm not, I don't like talking in front of people. I don't like talking in the crowds and stuff like that. But I'm required to do it in my job. I'm required to do it with this podcast, right? Mm-hmm. And all of those years of doing that, the service other people gave through sharing and allowing me to share has just helped me. It's made me better at.
It's done the exact same for me. I used to not be a public speaker. I couldn't even pass speech in college.
College.
Yeah.
I couldn't pass speech in 6th grade.
She went to college.
Man,
It's okay. Go ahead.
sorry, Jill.
Yeah, I had a hard
First time anybody's ever been picked on for being more educated than everybody else.
Well, I didn't mean that like.
When I drove by that college,
She was like, I could barely get out of Harvard,
Oh my God, please.
barely
Took me 5 years to get out of Drop Wrong Junior High, that's
struggling with that 3.9 grade point.
dude. I didn't know if that was a blood alcohol or a grade point
I'm
average.
just lucky they didn't escort me out of Walnut Hill Elementary Middle School. And didn't know if that was a blood alcohol level or grade point. Yeah, but in college you took speech,
Yes.
and that's like the art of giving speeches.
Yes, and I it took me 3 times to pass it, and I passed with a D finally. But I did not speak before, but I also was not sober by any means, and so now like AA and telling my story and what I do for a living, I'm a speaker now.
Yeah,
That's crazy,
yeah, it is.
and I'm comfortable with it because I've done it so much now.
Well, I think also it's the truth. It's so much more comfort in getting up there and telling the truth.
Yeah.
I can't, you can't make some of the stuff up in our life that goes on. That guest we had a couple episodes, Hodge, you couldn't make up the story
I've
about the
heard
little
more
guy.
people talk about the little man and his toolbox
Yeah.
in the Air Force Base. Oh, my God. Yeah.
Well, if I had a toolbox, I would be checking in it every time I got in a vehicle for a while. So, yeah, I even told someone that story at work. I was like, y'all wouldn't believe this story. I got to tell you. Oh, yeah.
Well, we are not, it's not boring in recovery. I can tell you that. There's some good stories.
And there's always plenty to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
There is so much service that can be done. You don't even have to ask someone. However, if you want to ask someone, go to a group conscious meeting. That would be my starter. And you're going to hear them talk about it. It could be an upcoming intergroup, and this is what we need at the intergroup. And I also have another one. If anybody asks you to tell your story, I always tell my story, no matter where it is. I'm new to that group in Fort Worth. There's only about 7 regulars that come every single day. I go to the noon meeting in Fort Worth, Texas, off McCart Street. And a guy walked up to me the other day, and he said, do you ever tell your story? And I said, I will, if you need me to tell my story. And he said, let me get your name and number, because my sponsor is the guy who organizes whatever it was, and he'll probably give you a call, see if you want to tell your story. And I said, okay, and I don't turn it down because I was told early on, if somebody asked you to tell your story, tell it. Sometimes it takes 15 minutes, Matt. I get it.
Maybe 13 and a half.
But the longer we stay sober, the more God stories that we can include in that story, So I've basically been sober longer than I drank, as far as the, alcoholically or with consequences, ruining lives and all that stuff. I've drank since I was 14 years old, but on a regular basis was when I was about 27. I started drinking majorly, to where it was, causing outside problems. And now I've been sober longer than that stint was, and the stories that I could tell now are way more interesting than the stories I could tell whenever I was drinking. That may be comical, which unfortunately, there are comical stories, kind of like the guy in the trunk. It's hilarious, but on the inside, they're terrifying.
Sure.
Yeah.
When you're that guy, it's absolutely terrifying. But all part of service, when you sit down with someone and they're willing to tell you that comical story, and then after they tell you the comical story, say, "Be honest with you though, man, I'm scared death's going to happen again because I don't know what's going to happen to me."
Mm-hmm.
As funny as it may sound, I may end up in jail. I may end up dead. Some worse than that, someone else may end up in jail or dead.
But I think that's for me coming in here and not knowing anything about AA, and I hear people tell these stories and they've dealt with them. So it's, it's a story, but I have figured out the issue. Here's what I've done to move on, and it's kind of funny. I can laugh at it. Yes, it was serious at the time. It's still serious, but I have a plan of action to keep that at bay. So that was the part that intrigued me.
Yeah. Why not laugh? We have recovered.
We do laugh. If we don't do nothing else, we laugh. So
we do. I try to on a regular basis. So service work, I can never tell you not to. I would never tell you not to. If anything, it just makes it more interesting and gets you more involved, keeps you plugged in. We have a voicemail. Yes, we have, and not just a voicemail that you call. We have a voicemail. We actually have a voicemail that we got from one of our listeners, new listener. So I'm gonna play that voicemail, and then we'll close this thing out. So how about this?
Hey guys, my name is Nick. I'm an alcoholic from Nashville, Tennessee. I travel a lot, and I get to listen to you. I just started listening to y'all, and I've enjoyed hearing y'all's experience and just a good old-fashioned AA talk on my trips. So, but I did want to say that I was able to meet Matt on Tuesday night in Bossier City at the Koala Club, and that group. I travel all the time, so I don't know anybody. And that group, I mean, as soon as the meeting was done, everybody's split except for Matt, and there is a lot more to AA than just going to that meeting, and some of the best times I've had in the program have been sitting outside before or after a meeting talking to people, and Matt, you made a good impression to me, and you didn't even tell me about your podcast. I had to find that out later, but I love what y'all do. Keep it up. Once again, man, thank you very much, Matt, for making me feel welcome. Y'all have a good one.
And that right there is service.
Yeah. So how appropriate that we get that voicemail on a service episode.
That is weird. And I'm going to tell you the backup to that story. Speaking of service, that's not my 8:00 at night is not my normal meeting time. And one of our other people that normally does that texted at 7:00. That meeting starts at 8 and said, "I have to work. Any way you can do that meeting?" And I did not want to do that meeting, but I went up there and did it, ended up meeting that guy. So sometimes, we talked a while after the meeting, and good guy, and we hope he comes back and sees us. So we talked about odd AA meetings in different towns. That's always a good conversation. Mm-hmm. So, but thanks for calling in, Nick.
Yeah,
that's awesome, man.
Appreciate that, Nick. And just a reminder to our listeners, that voicemail line is area code 817-988-2530. And we have a email if you want to get a hold of us by email. That is gandbbossier, that's BOSSIER at gmail.com. That's gandbbossier at gmail.com. Can reach us. We love the voicemails. We love the email, and just full on notification. That's only our second voicemail. So I was really excited about it. So I really do appreciate that, Nick. Got to mention the countries we have listeners in. We have them in Ireland. We have them in the UK, Taiwan, Bulgaria, Australia, Denmark, Saudi Arabia, Canada, and the United Arab Emirates. So I don't think we actually added anybody there, but we just do appreciate anybody that listens. And
Absolutely.
man, to listen outside the U.S. is that's rock star material right there. So
That's right.
we have a total of 2,924 listens. So we're 6 listens away from from 3,000 total listens, and we have 86 Spotify followers.
Wow.
Our last episode had 44 listens so far, and that was since last week when we released it on Sunday. And this one will probably be released on a Saturday. So we send our shout outs. We got who we got?
We got Brian in Monroe.
Yeah, we got Nick apparently in Tennessee.
Nick in Tennessee. Miss Faye and her covey of sponsees that she forces to listen to.
Danielle, we got Danielle.
Danielle, that's one of them. Yep.
We got Roger, and we got Deb. We got Rhonda, and we got Kim. We have Judy and Larry, and this episode will be the final episode before Larry's recovery date. So, gonna go ahead and just at least send a shout out. We don't get to claim our day until the day of, but we're gonna definitely send a shout out Larry's way. And I think that who else? I don't want to forget anybody.
I do want to say this. So I work with someone now who is Jill's roommate. I'm not going to say her first name but she's agreed to come on soon. So Mike and I are going to get to talk to her. Roommate in rehab, by the way. So Mike and I are going to get to grill her on Jill.
God, she saw the ugly, the real ugly.
This is going to be a fun one coming up, and she's excited. She did say she would do it after Christmas, so we're looking forward to that.
That's going to be pretty cool.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So that
tell
wraps
us how
up.
Jill really is.
Well,
no,
we can all gather.
Yeah.
I don't think Jill's got her own audience out there. We just show up to Jill's podcast.
Oh, stop.
that's right.
So anyway, that's going to wrap up another episode, Matt. Jill, appreciate it, guys.
Absolutely.
Next episode is going to be on Step 12. We are going to talk about service in addition to working with others and
Awesome.
and trying to practice these principles in all of our affairs. So until next time, we have been in Rule 62 Studios in beautiful Bossier City, Louisiana, and this has been The Grouch and the Brainstorm.